Hey everyone. I mentioned last week that I love certain cartoons. Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite currently. I had talked about this week on one of my lives that there's this character called Ko the Face Stealer. The premise is that Ko steals the face and essence of those that confront him and express emotion. I won't go into detail about the amazingness of that cartoon, but just one thing I want to call out is, interestingly, Ko is able to switch between the faces at will to respond to his environment. In a way, we're all like Ko. Not the face stealing part, don't get me wrong there, but how we all hide behind the faces that we wear. The problem is that if we hide behind those faces without knowing who we are deep down, when we do start to then we start to wonder like if anything is really authentic. So on this podcast, I ask you to journey with me as I explore the topic of imposter syndrome and discuss the balance between knowing who you are and switching between your many faces to respond to your environment. Thank you for tuning in to Eli's Echo. I'm your host, Eli Albalos. So today we're going to have a little bit of a different format. I'm going to do a combination podcast and YouTube experiment. So those of you that are tuning in on the podcast also know that I'm also going to post this via video to my YouTube channel. Honestly, I'm working with a social media manager and she has some amazing advice. And so I figured I'll give this a shot and see if I'm able to reach just different audiences. So hopefully this is going to be a little bit more free flowing. Hopefully it's still impactful at the same time. But my goal is to try and just deliver my thoughts a little more fluidly. I do have a little bit of a note matrix here, bulleted points that I'm going to follow. That's just who I am. If you wanted full on live, no scripting, follow me on Facebook and you'll see my daily doses that are a little bit more live. So we'll see how this works. So let's kick off. Talking about Ko the Face Stealer, my many faces, I have a lot. I'm a Christian. I go by the name Anthony. I go by the name Eli. My nieces and nephews call me Uncle Lion. It's one of my favorites. A super cute story about how that came about. But since my very first niece and nephew were around, I've been Uncle Lion. So it's one of my favorite faces. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a stepfather. I'm a grandfather. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, retired police officer. Currently, I'm a global leader in a tech company. I'm a lifelong learner, currently a doctoral student. I'm an author, a mentor, and a gamer. So that was about 16 different faces that I have and that I can switch to at a moment's notice. Sometimes they mix and match really well, like being a father and a stepfather. I've had stepsons for over 20 years now, and they are my sons. They are treated no different as my son. Some of them don't mix. Some of those faces don't mix too well. So I'm a retired police officer and I'm a business owner. Well, one of my businesses that I'm starting is a cash to crypto ATM business. That kind of doesn't mix and match a whole lot given the two contrasts there. But regardless of the circumstance, the goal is to not lose sight of who I am behind those faces. I'm a combination of all of them. And I feel that I'm successful and I have accomplished well in all those faces. But sometimes it's easy to get lost and wonder with so many different faces, do I really know and understand who I am? Like I said, sometimes those faces mix and match really well, but other times they don't, right? I'll give you an example. Like I started this podcast and video with, I love video games. I am into MMORPG games, right? Massive multiplayer online role-playing games. I love them. I've played World of Warcraft for many, many years off and on. I've played Star Wars many, many years, but I'm also involved in first-person shooter games like Modern Warfare and Warzone. That one's fun because I just like it, but also with my sons, my stepsons included, all my sons spread out across the U.S., it's neat that we all get to log on and play together. Like that's just something I really, really like to do. And I've been doing with them since they were little. And like while video games makes me a cool Uncle Lion and a grandfather, can't wait to play video games with my grandson who's 21 months right now. But video games and being a gamer doesn't really make a difference when I'm a global leader in a tech company, right? If I'm at a business meeting, I can't break the ice by talking about the most recent skin on Warzone that I'm like totally dying to get, right? For those of you that don't know, a skin is like a character outfit, and sometimes they're really cool. I know I'm going to digress a little bit, but like right now you can buy a Terminator skin in Warzone, and like every bit of me wants to jump on and buy that skin and play. But I'm doing a podcast instead. And I've been working on this podcast for the past couple hours because I had some technical issues, right? But again, I digressed. But therein starts to lie the problem. Sometimes I have polarizing thoughts that don't align with what I'm quote unquote expected to be doing, right? So I try and hide who I really am behind these many faces that I wear. And the problem with hiding behind those many faces is I start to forget who I really am and then question my abilities and skills at the worst of times, right? Wondering about who you are and worried about your true abilities and skills will lead you to what is known as imposter syndrome. I'm going to define imposter syndrome in a little bit, but first I want to give some examples to help kind of frame those that are watching and listening to like what imposter syndrome really is. So like as an example, like sometimes I'm in class discussing the ontological and epistemological accountability. And I would not admit that in my mind, as I'm going through these classes, that my mind's wandering towards like video games, right? I wouldn't do that in this doctoral class, right? But, as my mind is wandering in these classes, I wonder, if I really belong in that doctoral class. If I love to play video games and I'm just getting really tired about talking about the ecological systems that intersect in a workplace, a thought pops in my head going like, man, like I'm such a fake, like, and people are going to realize it. Like I'm faking my way through being a student, even though I'm doing well as a student, even though I can follow the conversation, I can contribute. In my mind, I'm still like, dude, you're such a fake. You want to play video games, but you're supposed to be a student. You're supposed to be getting your doctoral degree, right? In the workplace, I might be in a meeting where I'm with a vice president, a senior vice president about a program that I'm delivering and then I'm creating. And while I'm in that meeting, my mind is wandering because I have our Airbnb on the side and I have a guest that should be checking in soon. And so I'm like glancing at my phone to make sure that they're checking in on time or there's no issues, right? I can't stop a meeting with a VP and a senior VP to say, hold on guys, sorry, let me check my phone. I'm expecting someone to be checking into my Airbnb right now. It just doesn't work, right? So during those types of meetings, then I start to wonder like, damn, like, who am I to be in this meeting when I'm thinking about my Airbnb, but I'm also expected to make a multi-million-dollar decision by the end of this meeting? I have those conflicting thoughts, right? So if I'm thinking during that meeting, if I'm thinking about my Airbnb, I tell myself like, well, maybe I'm not good enough to be in this meeting. And eventually maybe people are going to realize also that I'm not good enough and they're going to realize that I'm a fraud. All right. So you have those conflicting thoughts. For me specifically, that happened in that workplace. But I'm going to give it like one more, final example that might be more relatable to some of you. I do everything in my power to provide financial security for my wife and my family. And my wife has full faith in my abilities. I've proven through our marriage my commitment to provide for my family. But sometimes I am scared as hell to admit that I'm afraid of making the wrong decision, especially when it comes to like a new business venture or an investment. So then the thought pops in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, despite all your education experience, you don't know what you're doing. You're a phony. and you don't deserve to be with your wife. Like all those self-deprecating thoughts just start to enter, right? Well, some of those examples might be a little bit of a stretch. One of two of those examples really are thoughts that I've had in the past. All of those are examples of what is known as imposter syndrome. I was a new employee in 2016 at Facebook when I first actually learned about what imposter syndrome was. And actually, during my time at Facebook, it was the first time I actually acknowledged what it was. And I had to have a senior leader come to me and basically smack some sense into me to like get over myself, right? The easiest way to define imposter syndrome is that it's a feeling you get when you think you're a fraud and start to doubt your abilities. Imposter syndrome can make you feel like you're a fake, right? It can fill you with this fear, thinking that people around you are going to also think you're a fake. And worse yet, it can give you a feeling that you don't even deserve to be where you are, right? All of this goes through a person's head without any prompting from like the external environment. So what I mean is there does not need to be like an external trigger for any of this stuff to occur. It can purely be a cognitive exercise within yourself, right? Imposter syndrome is a self-defeating and self-fulfilling thought process that does not give any bearing to the hard work and effort that a person puts in to get where they are. And I say self-fulfilling because over time, if you really start to believe those negative thoughts that are going through your head, I'm a fraud, I'm a phony, I'm a fake, eventually they will become true, right? And that's the worst part of imposter syndrome. If you can't rescue yourself from that defeating thought process, it will eventually come true. And the interesting thing is that imposter syndrome can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're highly educated, highly successful, or even just possess like a trivial education or an hourly job. It doesn't matter. Imposter syndrome is not biased. You'll see it in friendships, relationships, and even among family members. The purpose of, what I'm saying here today is that you need to understand not only what imposter syndrome is, but when you're starting to experience imposter syndrome. Like in my opinion, there's three reasons why you just need to understand the impact of this. The first, for people that are faith-based, you will inevitably experience imposter syndrome when you're on God's path. When you're accomplishing God's will, you will be attacked spiritually, right? Ultimately, it's an effort to test your resolve. I know this to be true, like from my own experience. When you are fulfilling God's will, accomplishing what his desire is for you at that moment, at that time, you are going to be under attack. I'll give you an example. I don't know if I've talked about this on my lives, but Beth and I, we just started an Airbnb. We purchased it in June, and over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, we converted an empty shell of a home into this beautiful Airbnb. Got professional photos, got it posted, and we were in this window of 8 weeks before our first mortgage payment was due. So we knew we had to really crank out and turn over that home so that we can start making money so that the home paid for itself. And that whole time, we knew this home, we were destined to buy this home for this purpose, right? We were following God's will. Lots of prayers. We made it happen. We turned everything over to him. The whole entire time that we put that together, and not once did we feel that home was ours. Yes, we own it on paper, but we didn't feel like it was our home. We literally felt like we were building a home for families to come and create memories. But lo and behold, we get our pictures ready to go. We're like, okay, this is fantastic. We start on Airbnb website. We start on VRBO website. And within 3 days, we're shut down. Whatever reason, no explanation, We were shut down on both websites because we were identified as being like a fraudulent home. It took 3 weeks to finally get our accounts unlocked. And let me tell you, those 3 weeks definitely tested our resolve. We knew this is what we had to do. We were on God's path. But all of a sudden now we're starting to question, like, did we do the right thing? Like, did we make the right decisions? Oh my gosh, we thought we were being faithful. Oh my gosh, we thought we were doing this financially, correct. We thought we were doing this with, financial direction. And so we're starting to think, oh my gosh, what are we doing? We're fake. We can't do this. We're not business owners. But we held to our resolve. We kept going in the path that we were supposed to. And we finally, within a few weeks, resolved the Airbnb issue, the Airbnb website. And over the past 2 months, we have just been, now the challenge has been not, are we going to rent to pay our mortgage? Now it's like, we are so busy. Can we clean it fast enough for the next people? But we were definitely challenged, and our resolve was brought to the forefront to determine, are we going to stay forward? Are we going to doubt ourselves? Do we think that we're a phony, that we're a fake because we were trying to do something that we weren't prepared for? But we didn't let those thoughts win. A second reason to acknowledge imposter syndrome. Faith-based or not, when you're doing something that feels good, like Airbnb, or that benefits others, maybe it's a relationship, or allows you to pursue your dreams, you have a job, you got a promotion, inevitably what ends up happening is you start to wonder when the floor is going to fall out from underneath you. It just happens. I think is we all start to wonder, is something just too good to be true? Is this Airbnb the direction? Is it too good to be true? Is this relationship am I in? Is it too good to be true? Is this job that I found, my dream job, is it too good to be true? Sometimes it is, right? But that's not the point of this podcast. But the bottom line is it's so easy for us to see the negative, but not the positive in our life and what we're going through. A cool example that I just fell upon was a video by Simon Sinek. I love his videos, very motivational. I've read a couple of his books. If you haven't checked him out, check him out. One of my favorites is Understanding Your Why, is by Simon Sinek. But he talks about humans can't comprehend the negative. I was a little bit confused about that. Maybe some of you are as well. But he uses an example, right? So we're going to try it here and hopefully it works. So I'm asking for you all to clear your mind, right? Whatever you're doing, pay attention to what you're doing, but just clear your mind, clear your thoughts, and don't think about a clown. If you were like me, I had to think about a clown. I couldn't stop myself. It doesn't matter if it was like the clown from It. It doesn't matter if you love clowns, if you hate clowns. The minute I said, don't think about a clown, you probably thought about a clown, right? It's so difficult not to think about the negative, especially when you're told not to, right? Think about when you were learning how to drive a car or ride a bike. If someone was beside you or someone's in the car and someone said, don't hit that trash can, you're probably going to hit the trash can because your eyes are going to immediately drawn to it, right? Even though you were told not to do it, you're going to do it, right? So we all need to start to learn to think about the positive, right? On my daily doses, I call it about celebrating the wins. Look at what you've done to positively get there, to combat the feeling of being that phony or that fake. For my example of the Airbnb, I had to put myself and my wife in check. We had to step back and go, look, we were so focused on getting the home, and then we were so focused on, getting through the Airbnb, and then we're like, oh my gosh, are we gonna rent? Oh my gosh, can we clean it in time? Like all these negative thoughts. Can we do this? Can we do that? Is this gonna happen? Where I finally had to put us in pause and say, no, let's stop. Look at how much we've done. Look at what it took to get us here, whether it be purchasing the home, furnishing the home, learning the skills to put on Airbnb, finding an appropriate cleaner, like all those things, those were wins. We had to shift our thought process, not from, I wonder if this is going to happen, I wonder if that's not going to happen, to look at what we did. Look how far we got. Look how far we've come. Celebrating those wins allows you to break that negative thinking by repositioning it into the positive. The third thing that I want to acknowledge for imposter syndrome is that everyone goes through it at some point in their life. Doesn't matter if you're a faith-based person or just a normal person waiting for the floor to drop out from under them. Everyone will experience some type of imposter syndrome. So you better know what it is so that when you're going through it, you can address it. So how do you address it, right? So I'm going to give some high-level tips that I think are going to be effective to help you overcome the bouts of imposter syndrome. The first one, if you follow my podcast or live videos, I talk about sharing your experiences a lot. I do. I think there's a lot of value for all of us to break outside of our shell and bring other people in. Imposter syndrome is no different. And I'll tell you right now, whether or not you know the definition or knew the definition before this podcast, everyone has gone through it at some point. Doesn't matter if it's in business, friendships, relationships, at home. Everyone has gone through it at some point. This is important to know because you are not unique to those circumstances of going through imposter syndrome. People experience it. So I guarantee if you talk to any of your close acquaintances, you'll find another person that has gone through it. And again, they might not have known the definition, but once you start to dig deep, you'll realize everyone at some point in time doubts their abilities. We just do. We worry about the negative. So that's great news, because in order to solve and combat imposter syndrome, you need to talk to someone. You need to talk to a trusted person. I don't mean you need to confess your whole entire soul, but especially if you're facing a situation. For me, I've gone through situations at work where I'm like, man, I don't know if who am I to be making these types of decisions for this program, right? For me, I go to my wife. I'm like, okay, look, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. I kind of lay it out there. I'm like, you know what? I am literally going through imposter syndrome. Like, I don't feel like I should have a seat at that table to make this decision. But it takes those sessions talking to my wife, someone I trust, so I can vent and just get stuff off my chest. And the great thing is when you find that confidant, they're not going to judge you. They shouldn't judge you, right? If it's that right person, they're not going to judge you. They're going to listen. But then the great thing is they're going to open your eyes to how great you really are. Now, I'm not talking like it's going to be this huge pep talk, like, no, you're great, you're fantastic, everyone wins here. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But what I mean is, especially if it's an imposter syndrome situation, when you have that trusted person, they're going to give you a different perspective. One that's going to allow you to look at something without emotion, right? They aren't invested in this situation. That might be invested in your friendship, but they're not they don't have those same emotions that are running through your brain. So you're going to have someone that's going to be able to speak about your abilities, about your successes, put things in a different perspective, and allow you to break that imposter syndrome situation. At the end, ultimately, they just really help to restore your confidence in yourself. The second tip, don't let societal constructs and stereotypes enter into your mind, right? The best way to make this happen is stop comparing yourself to others. For me, when I'm in my virtual classroom in my doctoral program and I see a bunch of quote unquote like-minded professionals, and everyone on the call is using our fancy terminology we just learned and the jargon that we're supposed to, because we're talking about epistemological accountability, it's easy to get intimidated and worried, right? I might think that my love for video games or my tattoos make me seem like I'm unsophisticated, because I just don't fit the mold. Like, I'm in this classroom and we're all wearing the same face. Like, we're all students. But it doesn't matter what I'm seeing on that call. I know nothing about what's going on beneath the surface, right? I don't have to be defined, but what I think everyone should have what I think everyone should look like or be like, or the background they should have, or how they should be focusing, it doesn't matter. right? Everyone has unique circumstances or circumstances that are unique to them, and no one path is better than another. It doesn't matter if, yeah, on the background, I love video games, or I love to, flip things I buy on the internet. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make me any less of a appropriate doctoral student that has the knowledge required to be successful in a program. So instead of comparing yourself to others, embrace your specialness, embrace your gifts. I know that playing video games gives me great hand-eye coordination. It gives me an outlet to relax. And like, best of all, it gives me some amazing technical skills. It just does. So rather than doubt myself, embrace it and forget the stereotypes. The third tip, this one is the most important, and it's because it's the most important, it's easy to say and hard to do. Get over it. Get over imposter syndrome. Like that's it. Like, your special gifts got you to where you are. It doesn't matter if your gifts and your uniqueness and your specialness got you that relationship, or got you that job, or because of how you performed in that job, it got you that promotion, or because you're a lifelong learner, your gifts helped you attain a higher level of education, or maybe it's friendships that have been sustained over a lifetime. You achieved those accomplishments through hard work and dedications. Your gifts and skill got you to that point, to this point, to the next point. And they're going to help keep you going. So get over yourself. Talk to that trusted advisor, trust in your abilities, and embrace your specialness and your gifts. Again, it's really easy to say, but hard to do. Stop looking at the negative, because I guarantee there'll always be another negative. Instead, embrace the positive and embrace where you're at, embrace where you're going to go, and embrace the abilities and skills that you bring to the table in any environment. Ultimately, know that the culmination of all of your faces that you wear makes you special. Don't hide behind those faces, but instead leverage them to display your gifts. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it sucks. I can speak from experience. It really sucks. But it doesn't need to define who you are. Embrace your specialness and let your gifts shine through. Thank you for listening and watching my podcast. Please subscribe to receive new notifications on new episodes. Currently, you'll find me on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and now YouTube. Certainly, your support will definitely keep me motivated and inspired to share new topics. So please, keep those comments coming. You can join my fan page on Facebook at Eli Albalos for an inside look into the craziness of my life. That's also where I post daily doses, where you'll kind of get sneak peeks into stuff that might turn into a podcast or a blog. You can also check out my website at elisecho.com. It's a work in progress, but I'll post my podcast links there, and I've started a blog that will support a lot of my podcast discussions and offer an opportunity to directly engage with all the listeners. Before I go, I'd like to leave you with a call to action or a challenge. Would you share my podcast with someone else? I'm seeking to build a community of folks that I may be able to help by just sharing my thoughts and my experiences. I ask that you find at least one person this week that you feel comfortable sharing my podcast with and send it to them. You never know who might need to hear my message. Something to consider. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Signing off for now. This is Eli's Echo with your host, Eli Albalos. Thanks.